welcome back to Draft Nights. It's been a second. School's wrapping up. Sam, how are you doing? How are you holding on?
I'm holding on all right. Final exam in 2 days.
Whew.
Doing all right. It's been an exciting start to the year.
Yeah, we've got a couple people that texted me. They're like, when are you going to talk about some of the trades that have been going on in the NFL? Because, of course, we might be called Draft Nights, and the main focus is the transition from the college to the NFL level. But I think it's important that we get into some of these big, big trades and how they're going to have an impact in the NFL.
Yeah, should definitely be interesting, and also with the past few weeks of the NFL coming out, definitely a lot to talk about. So let's get right into it.
Absolutely. So the first one, the one that kind of everyone was expecting for a while. There's some others that people weren't expecting, but AJ Brown going to the Patriots. In return, the Eagles got a 2028 first-round pick and a 2027 fifth. Now, after arriving in New England, AJ Brown inked a 3-year, $96 million contract, which is now the seventh biggest among all active wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, this was not the most shocking move in my opinion, but a big one nonetheless. And I think it's going to be a big one, especially for the Patriots going into next year. Making it to the Super Bowl, falling just short. I think AJ Brown could really push them over that mark, and really give them that final boost to bring home another Lombardi trophy. It'll be interesting for sure. He's definitely had ups and downs throughout his career, and he's a little bit older for sure. But that being said, I think he can really bring some experience to New England, and I think that he can be really beneficial for this team that could use a little bit more talent in the receiving game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. One of the things that you see a lot of with teams that lose the Super Bowl is they think, oh, we were just there. We'll just like run it back with the same team. And it almost never works. Like, really, how many times has the team that lost the Super Bowl come back really, really quickly? I mean, aside from like the Eagles or the Chiefs recently. So them trying to take that next step and getting Drake May a number one target, I think was a really good step for them.
Yeah, I think this could really be the step that puts them over the edge. AJ Brown's going to come in as that number one wide receiver, or if not number one, he's going to be playing more than enough minutes per game. It's going to be a big step forward for the Patriots, and especially for Drake May, who didn't have a ton of talent and still made so much work last year. I think that bringing in Brown is just going to be a massive step forward for them.
So one thing that immediately jumps out to you when you look at Brown's time on the Eagles was it's kind of a tale of two halves. In the first half, in the first two seasons that he played in Philadelphia, his stats for those seasons were, I'm losing the exact number. His stats for those first two seasons were over 1,400 yards for both of them, 11 touchdowns for the first one, and 7 touchdowns in the second. Now, in his second half, in the last two seasons, he had just barely over 1,000 yards each. And if you remember, there was a lot of discourse going around of AJ Brown wanting to be more involved in the offense. He wanted more targets. He wanted a more like high level offense that catered towards him. And the diva word gets thrown out a lot towards wide receivers. I feel like sometimes unfairly so, but he did do a lot of actions to show his frustration openly outside of just the locker room.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I thought one of the most interesting parts about it was that in 2024, he started kind of this rant almost of wanting more targets. And in 2025, he was targeted almost 25 more times. So, clearly something was changing. And also, getting over 1,000 receiving yards, that's nothing to scoff at. It's not where he was in 22 and 23, but it's still a very solid number of yards and a very solid performance each season. I think one of the interesting things about it is that we've seen wide receivers who want more playing time, like Antonio Brown, really peak in their careers and then just crash to the bottom. I think AJ Brown's the type of guy where he can stay consistent for a very long time, but you don't want to get into that situation where you have a receiver that their off the field decisions are playing such a big role that it's affecting their on the field decisions.
I agree. I think the question with A.J. Brown with this Patriots team is going to be is he more than the 1,000-yard wide receiver that he's been these last 2 seasons? Because while you mentioned 1,000 yards is a good season for a wide receiver, it is not 7th highest paid, number 1 target for a Super Bowl winning team level good. So it's going to be a really big question of, were the Eagles really holding him back? Was he really being held back by the playbook, maybe by Jalen Hurts' play style, going to now the MVP second place, like Drake May, high-level quarterback play? Or was it really that A.J. Brown hasn't been performing as well as his first 2 seasons? And if the case is that he goes into New England and is about the same level that he's been these last 2 seasons in Philadelphia, I think this is a bad trade for New England. And I think it's going to really hamper their production moving forward.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that we'll see is whether he can have such an impact on the other receivers in New England. I think that one of the reasons why you get a guy like A.J. Brown is because of how much experience he has. The Patriots are a pretty young team overall, and so I think that if he can bring that experience in and really coach these younger players, that's where you're going to get your value out of him. I don't think that he's going to have too many more seasons of 1,400 yards or too many more seasons where he's really putting up huge numbers. But that doesn't mean that he can't still make a massive impact on this team, and one that is worth that $93 million.
Yeah. I mean, look at just last season. The team made the Super Bowl, and they had only one player over 1,000 yards, and that's Stephon Diggs, who is no longer on the team and had his own host of off-the-field issues. So, and despite that, Drake May still finished, again, second in MVP voting with 4,394 yards, 31 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a league-high 72% completion percentage. This is a team that is ready to compete, as we saw. They made the Super Bowl. But the real question, again, is going to be, is A.J. Brown the player that's going to take them over the hump to the next level, or is he a bit too much of a reach? Because you never know. That 2028 first-round pick could be a lot higher than people expect. Teams rise and fall in the NFL fast.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. And to your point about how Stephon Diggs was the only receiver with over 1,000 yards, that's going to be interesting to watch for A.J. Brown because it's going to be a different role than he had in Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, pass heavy, when they were a pass heavy team, it was specifically to Brown and Devonta Smith. But what's going to be interesting is that in New England, there are so many more targets that just all receive fewer yards. But that being said, there's still so many passing yards to go around. Like you said, Drake May still putting up over 4,000 passing yards on the season. So his role is going to be different in New England. Whether he'll adapt really well to that or not, time will tell. But if he can comfortably, settle into his role, because what he's been doing for the past 2 seasons is exactly what New England needs. New England doesn't need a guy putting up 1,500 yards. They need a guy putting up 1,000. And yes, putting up more is going to be beneficial for them. But that being said, it's just a different it's a different play scheme. It's a different offensive style. And I think it could be one where A.J. Brown adapts really well unless he continues asking for more targets, which isn't really the New England play style, in which case it could backfire.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up. It's like, even if he is just still the 1,000 yard player, and maybe that's what New England wants, and maybe New England is able to stay consistent, is A.J. Brown going to be happy? Are the fans going to be happy? Are the front office going to be happy? Because, sure, if you get equal production from Stephon Diggs this last season, who was on a very small contract, compared to A.J. Brown, who's on the 7th highest contract for a wide receiver, if they're getting similar or equal production, I think that is a failure for New England. But looking at the other team, I feel honestly, the Eagles have done well to prepare for the departure of A.J. Brown. It's feel like it's been a long time coming. First round, they drafted Mekhi Lemon. I thought they got him at a great spot. I thought that getting him that early, like that late in the draft, was a really big steal. They still have Devontae Smith, who a lot of people have argued could be a number one option wide receiver. I honestly don't think that the Eagles are going to suffer that much from losing A.J. Brown.
No, I fully agree with that. And, they also have that Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley combo. Mm-hmm. So that's really where a lot of their offense comes from. But that being said, Mekhi Lemon, Devonta Smith, and Hollywood Brown. So that's 3 solid options for receivers right there. I don't think that the Eagles will suffer very much because of this. And in that sense, I think they made a really good move. They had a player that didn't really want to be there, it seemed. They got rid of him. They're benefiting with a future first-round draft pick and a future fifth-rounder.
Yeah.
And they're not really losing that much. They have the tools to kind of step in A.J. Brown's place and take over. And I think that they'll be okay. I don't think that they'll be harmed very badly. We'll see what happens.
I think you got to look at just as a whole. They had a player who very clearly did not want to be there. Honestly, you could say he didn't even want to be there after they won the Super Bowl, in their Super Bowl run. He was complaining. He was still causing a lot of commotion in the locker room. And you get a first-round pick out of that? That is really, really good front officing by the Eagles, and that's a really good value for A.J. Brown. And especially being able to then get a player like Mekhi Lemon, who honestly I think should have gone higher. And and especially, again, A.J. Brown's production these last 2 years, 1,000 yards is great. 1,000 yards is not $96 million worth. So if they're able to get maybe an increased production from Devontae Smith or a really good rookie year from Mekhi Lemon, I think you could get the exact same production from A.J. Brown without that locker room sore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the Eagles are going to benefit from this greatly. I think the Patriots could also benefit. It'll depend on kind of how he conducts himself. But honestly, I see this as a win all around in a way. Mm-hmm. And I see the Eagles having a much more confirmed win, but the Patriots could still see a massive boost because of, how much of a veteran A.J. Brown is and how much he could kind of share that knowledge with the others.
Mm-hmm. Now, the next trade we have, I don't even know if you can really call it a trade because it actually fell through. This was the Max Crosby to the Ravens trade. Now, when this first happened, I was shocked. The Ravens gave up their 2026 and 2027 first-round pick for Max Crosby, one of the best defensive ends in football, super productive, some of the most tackles for a loss you've seen in recent NFL memory. And then the trade falls apart because during his medical, they found what they called, quote, degenerative knee issues. And so the trade did not go through. What were your immediate reactions to when the trade happened and then when the trade failed?
I think when it first happened, I was super excited because I think that Crosby could have been the player that the Ravens needed to really take a big step forward. We've seen it time and time again. The Ravens' offense isn't their issue, really. And I think Crosby could have put them over the edge on defense. I didn't do a ton of research into his knee. And so, to that extent, I can't really speak on how serious this injury is. We have seen Crosby experience some injury problems in the past. But that being said, I really wanted to see this trade play through. I think it would have been really interesting. But now that the Raiders have Mendoza as well, I think it could be a really interesting season for them. I think they could really benefit on both sides of the ball now. They have some of the highest talent in the NFL on both sides. And if the Raiders are able to finally put, a solid season together, that could really turn around their future.
Mm-hmm. And, it should be pointed out before we get any further on, the Ravens' defensive stats and, what they're going to look in the future. After the trade went through, the Ravens picked up in free agency Trey Hendrickson for $120 million. And Trey Hendrickson is a guy who 2 seasons ago almost won the Defensive Player of the Year, had 17.5 sacks, and was clearly no offense to the other players, the only good defender on the entire Cincinnati Bengals roster. So I think personally speaking, I think the Ravens actually got away really well in this situation. Players don't fail medicals very often. When you're making a big trade where you're willing to give up 2 first-round picks for a guy who has such great production like Max Crosby, it would really take a lot of for the medical staff to be like, hey, do not do this. There is a problem. So while the Raiders may claim that there really isn't a problem, that Max Crosby will be fine and will be playing first game this season, if the Ravens medical staff said this is not worth the risk, I'm honestly inclined to believe the Ravens medical staff because they're the ones that are giving up such valuable assets. And if you're getting someone like Trey Hendrickson, who sure might not be as good as Max Crosby, but he's I don't know, maybe 75, 80% as good as Max Crosby for no first-round picks, just free agency acquisition, I think that's a really, really good outcome for the Ravens.
Yeah, I think that the pickup of Hendrickson means that the Ravens will automatically benefit in this coming season. Their defense will just unquestionably be better. I really want to see what happens in Crosby's future because, like you said, players don't typically fail medical exams. So you have to think that something is coming in the near future that will really, prohibit him from having good years. So it'll be interesting to see how that works, both for Crosby himself and for how that'll affect the Ravens, but also for how the Raiders will be affected by that. Because if you have Max Crosby and then suddenly you can't do anything with him, you can't, get good draft picks out of a trade or different players out of a trade, but you also don't get any production out of him, that is just a wasted diamond. So it'll be really interesting to see if injuries start to play a massive role in his life. And if they do, then the Raiders could be looking at yet another, rebuilding series.
Yeah, because while a lot of the time it's easy to look just pure analytically and say, oh, Max Crosby's coming back to the Raiders. Oh, they get to keep one of the best defensive ends in football, and he's going to be playing with this young team that's rising. Max Crosby's only 28. Who knows? Maybe by the time that Mendoza is starting to hit his prime and they've gotten all these new players, that Max Crosby will be such a super duper valuable player on the defensive end. But these players are humans. They feel the same emotions and the same he was traded. The Raiders said, we believe that 2 first-round picks is more value than you. Sorry, thank you for your service. You are going to Baltimore. He gets there for a team that wanted him, that actively sought him out, and we're probably going to offer him maybe a contract extension or whatever. That would be later down the line. And then he has to come back to Las Vegas. And now he's just with the team that got rid of him, and now they have to act like nothing happened. That is something we've saw it before. You look at the failed trade in the NBA, but with the Lakers and the Hornets a couple years ago with Mark Williams and Dalton Knecht. Dalton Knecht never recovered from that trade, and Mark Williams immediately wanted out of Charlotte. It creates an emotional and it creates a strain between the player and the organization.
Yeah, and for better or for worse, Max Crosby already is an emotional player. Typically, that's seen as a really good thing for him, just because, the amount of times where he's turning that emotion into a positive outcome rather than a negative one is just a much better ratio. But when he comes back, like you said, there are going to be emotions from him, and if he doesn't want to be there, it's going to show really quickly. And when you take that and you combine it with the injuries, and now suddenly he's thinking to himself, A, am I in the best shape of my life? This is supposed to be my prime, but is it really? And B, do they actually want me here? That's going to be a really kind of confusing mindset for him, I think. And it would be confusing for anybody. But for an already, emotional player like Crosby, it'll be interesting to see how he takes that and if he can use that to really propel his game forward or if he just falls completely.
And now, looking from the Ravens' perspective, last season they were second last in sack percentage and fourth last in total sacks. It was obvious that they were going to go for an edge rusher, and I think, again, like I said, I think getting Trey Hendrickson was the best outcome for them, being able to keep their first-round picks that they both used in this draft and for next year, and while also getting a high-level edge rusher. I wonder, as the season goes on, because Trey Hendrickson's had his own injury problems, if we're going to get to a point where we start thinking, oh, this Ravens team is good, but just imagine if they had Max Crosby. And then you start wondering that, and maybe you get to the playoff time, and maybe once again the Ravens lose in the playoffs, and you start wondering, man, they probably could have won that if they had Max Crosby.
Yeah, it's hard to point to one player in specific that really makes a massive impact in an NFL situation. Obviously, in the NBA, it's a little bit different. Like, if a team has LeBron, they're just guaranteed more likely to do better. Shout out LeBron, Ethan.
Shout out the GOAT.
But, like, for a player like Max Crosby, it's going to be interesting because I think we'll be comparing the Ravens with his season side by side. And I feel like that's a little unfair in a way because you could say, oh, yes, the Ravens are struggling a little bit. If they had Crosby, then it would all be different. Or at the same time, you could look at it and say, well, if Max Crosby was on the Ravens, then maybe he'd get injured a little bit faster because he'd probably be playing more often, more snaps. And so to that extent, it's hard to really use a bunch of hypotheticals about what will happen in the future. But there's no question that the Ravens defense needed more rushers. Crosby would have been that guy for them. And I think the fact that you're now going to be looking at Max Crosby's season in parallel with the Ravens defense is going to be interesting because I don't think they should be compared together. They're now, separate from each other. They have nothing to do with each other, strangely. But they're going to be compared, I think, for a really long time. And if Crosby fails heavily, then everyone will say the Ravens made a great choice. And if he does great, everyone's going to say the Ravens made a terrible choice. So,
like their medical staff was wrong. How could they say that? Yeah.
So I think it's a little difficult to judge based on what will happen in the future. But that being said, yes, I do think that there will be times where you're looking at the Ravens defense and saying they need an edge rusher. They had an edge rusher. What are they doing?
Yeah. Now, moving on to a trade that did happen, Jalen Waddle going from the Dolphins to the Broncos. In return, the Broncos gave up a 2026 first-round pick, a 2026 third-round pick, and a 2026 fourth-round pick. The Broncos also got a fourth-round pick in return, so they just swapped fourths for that part. Last season, Waddle was pretty underwhelming, but give him some grace. The Dolphins team was kind of a dumpster fire. He had 910 yards and 6 touchdowns. In his at his absolute peak, Waddle had a little bit over 1,300 yards, and then was the second wide receiver to Tyreek Hill for those couple of years on the Dolphins. I want to get your immediate reaction. What do you feel about Waddle going to this Broncos team?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm a huge Jalen Waddle fan. I think the dude's just so cool. And it was disappointing that Miami fell so heavily because, it was cool to watch him play. But I think he's going to be fantastic in Denver. I really do. I think the combination of Courtland Sutton with Waddle is going to be nuts. And then I think when you throw in Bo Nix, they really have all the pieces that they need now. So I love this trade for the Broncos. They gave up a lot for him. So there's no question that they're going to need a lot of production out of him. But I think he's young enough and he's still talented enough so that he can give that production. And I think the Broncos, especially, for this year and next year, are going to be in a super good place.
I'm actually going to disagree with you. I don't think this was that good of a trade for the Broncos. I think that it was a trade out of duress where they really just they didn't have quite the high-end wide receiver talent to really back up Bo Nix, who admittedly had a great season. But I just don't think Waddle's number one guy, especially considering that they signed him to a 3-year a 3-year $84 million contract, which is the 14th among wide receivers, which I feel like is fair-ish for his talent level. This is a guy who, in his career since 2021, only ever had one-ish year of high number one receiver level production, and ever since then he was the second place to Tyreek Hill on his own team. He's now entering his year 28 season. I don't know if you can really expect him to take another leap talent-wise. So I just think this is giving up a fair amount. I mean, a first, a third, and a fourth is not nothing, especially for a team that's looking to compete and needs good players on cheap contracts. I just don't think he's going to be the juice that they need to finally make and win the Super Bowl.
So I agree with you to the extent of they gave up a lot for him, and I don't know if he's worth all of that. I don't know if he's worth 80+ million as well as three draft picks, but I think that Denver isn't really expecting him to be a number one wide receiver. I think Courtland Sutton is still playing that role. And I think that if you can combine Courtland Sutton with the talent that Jalen Waddle has and just hasn't really been able to show in Miami, I think that they're really going to be able to elevate. So, yes, I agree with you in the sense of they gave up a lot. They're going to need a lot of production, and it's asking a lot from Waddle. But I think that if he's able to deliver, and I think he is, then this could still be a good chance for the Broncos. Like you said, Bo Nix just didn't have the talent from his receivers last year, but he himself had the talent. I think by bringing in Waddle, you now have Sutton, Waddle, and Evan Ingram. And, as a former Giants fan, Evan Ingram is the greatest tight end of all time now.
Whoa.
No question. No, but I think you now have three really solid targets. Sutton had 1,000+ yards. Waddle will have 1,000+ yards once again. And then Ingram is a solid tight end to throw to. So I think that while they gave up a lot for him, this could still end up being really good for the Broncos.
And I see where you're coming from, but I'm going to throw out another reason why I don't like this trade. I don't like Bo Nix that much. I don't think Bo Nix is that good. I think Bo Nix, I think he's been serviceable. He clearly was good enough to take them to the 1 seed. I think he really played well in that game against the Bills. But overall, this is a guy who isn't an upper echelon quarterback. I think he lacks the arm talent to really compete with the high-level QBs in the AFC. I think he doesn't have I don't think he has a very strong arm at all. I think he throws way too many picks. I think he's very limited with his playbook. As we saw, Sean Payton doesn't run a lot of complicated plays for him. He's already pretty old. You can't really expect him to get that much better. He's already 25, in his second season. I just think that the idea of let's get all these good wide receivers, but not top best in the NFL wide receivers next to Bo Nix, and that'll elevate us. I see the vision, I see the idea. I just don't think Bo Nix is going to be able to elevate Waddle, I don't see it personally.
Yeah, I think the reason why I'm a fan of Bo Nix is because I think that his production has been unquestionable, really. He's only been there for 2 seasons, and he took his team to the number 1 spot last year. So there's no question that he's going to need to repeat that success a couple of times over to get there. I think his age, honestly, isn't too much of a problem, especially because 25 right now, that's exactly where you need him to be. And the Broncos aren't really a team that are going to get a massive superstar right now, who's going to take them all the way. But when they can all kind of come together, you get a bunch of guys who honestly might be second strings on a lot of teams, but you elevate them, you work them together. That's where I think they're going to find success. And I think that Bo Nix has had, production unquestionably, especially for his record. So while he's going to have to repeat that a couple of times over for me to really be set on him, I have faith that he's able to do that, and I have faith that especially in the next, 2-3 years, the Broncos are going to see a lot of production.
I don't think that Bo Nix is one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL by any means, but I don't think that he is a top of the line quarterback, and I just don't think a player like Jalen Waddle and Bo Nix are very similar to me. Even though they play such different positions, where they're good and they're serviceable, but I just don't see them as the number 1 get you to a Super Bowl level players.
No,
and maybe you can say, and maybe you could say that the Broncos defense is the real weapon and that'll be the thing that takes them to the Super Bowl. Sure, you can argue that. I just don't think that this is a move that's going to make the Broncos offense good enough to really push through, personally.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this all especially goes back to the question of, did they give up too much for him? There's no question that Waddle will help the Broncos a little bit. The question is, will he help them $80 million worth plus 3 draft picks?
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
In that sense, I fully see where you're coming from of, is this really worth it? I think that he will bring production. And so because of that, I'm interested to see where it goes, and I'm not fully against it yet. But I do understand the concept of Jalen Waddle for $80 million and 3 draft picks is a lot. And it's going to be interesting to see if he can actually have that production because, he's not going to bring that A.J. Brown, veteran leadership as much. He's had one 1,300-plus yard season, but not much in the past couple of years.
Exactly.
So I don't think he's going to bring that massive success. And from that end, I see where you're coming from. But I'm still really interested to see because, like you said, the Broncos' defense is already there. So now they need their offense to kind of catch up a little bit more. And I think he might be the guy to do it because I think, he's not your superstar talent that you'll think of immediately, but he is a guy that will bring value to your team.
Yeah, and speaking on A.J. Brown, think about it like this. The Broncos gave up more for Jalen Waddle, really, than the Eagles gave up that the Eagles got for A.J. Brown. Like, if the Broncos had just waited, they probably could have used that trade package to get A.J. Brown. Yeah. And I think that would have been a lot more fair because A.J. Brown has proven that he can be the number one option on a Super Bowl either winning or a Super Bowl, making team. The way that Jalen Waddle has. Jalen Waddle's never won a playoff game. And even when he was in the playoffs, he was the number 2 option. And I just think that it was a little bit too fast of a deal because this happened pretty early into the offseason. I think if the Broncos were more patient and waited out, they could have really competed in the A.J. Brown sweepstakes. And even when that's over, looking at the deal that the Patriots gave up to get A.J. Brown, what's to say the Broncos can't go, Dolphins general manager, the Eagles only got 1 first-round pick and a 5th for A.J. Brown, who's better than Jalen Waddle. We should only have to give up 1 first and no other draft picks. That's where I feel like maybe it's using too much hindsight, and I think that's fair, but I just think that it's just too much for a player that isn't going to be your number 1 guy, solidly.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about what would have happened if A.J. Brown had gone to Denver, because I think he really would have been their guy. Yeah, to your point about how Waddle won't be the number 1 guy, I'm in full agreement there. I really do think it would have been interesting to see Brown go to Denver, and I think both teams just would have benefited so much more. I mean, we already said the Eagles didn't really lose a ton in losing A.J. Brown, but I think that Denver just could have profited so much by getting Brown instead of Waddle. That being said, though, Jalen Waddle does fit the playing style of Denver much better. He's a much
That's fair.
faster, scrappier wide receiver compared to A.J. Brown, who's going to just outpower you. So, in that sense, I think they made the best move for their team. But just in terms of talent, I think A.J. Brown should have gone to Denver. I think it would have been a smarter decision for Denver to make. And yeah, like you said, we're using too much hindsight there. But now it's kind of up to Jalen Waddle to deliver on what people have been saying that he has, but because of the Dolphins, he hasn't really been able to show it. Now he's got to show it, and if he doesn't, then the Broncos just messed up, the next 5 years of their future.
All right. The next 2 players we can look at as more of a package deal because they were both to the same team. The team that very famously said F them picks for years, getting them a Super Bowl, took a brief moment where they drafted some players. They're right back to their old philosophy. We're going to talk about the first one, which might be the less interesting of the 2 trades. It was Trent McDuffie going from the Chiefs to the Rams for the 29th overall pick, a 5th, a 6th, and a future 2027 third-round pick. Now, very clearly, the Rams needed help in the cornerback room. Especially, you look at that that NFC Championship game against the Seahawks, they got fried. Sam Darnold had 346 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, looked like he was completely unbothered by the Rams defense the entire time. Over this last season, They were 22nd in passing yards per game, 10th in EPA per pass given up, 15th in completion percentage, and 19th in passing touchdowns allowed. This is not a bottom tier passing defense, but this is not a Super Bowl caliber passing defense as we saw. So they got very aggressive. They knew that they had another first round pick, which I think they wasted, but they still saw that they had the ability to get someone in the first round. So they got a 2-time All-Pro in Trent McDuffie.
Yeah. I think it's funny in a way that we're talking about how Trent McDuffie is just like, a less important player in this trade and like
it's crazy.
Won't really do much. Like that's so strange to me given he has so much success. And I think he really will elevate this team. I think one of the interesting things that we'll have to see is that by, opposite of a team like the Patriots, the Rams are a much older team.
True.
Just in terms of like their true leaders. So I'm thinking of guys like Stafford and players like that. They're just a little bit older. And so I think it'll be interesting to see if this mentality of F them picks really pays off for them because if Trent McDuffie continues to put out the production that he has in the past, and he's not an old guy, he's currently 26 years or 25 years old. If he can put out that production, then it's going to be massive for the Rams. It's going to kind of give them that boost in combination with the Myles Garrett trade that we'll talk about in a sec.
Whoa, spoilers!
I know. Sorry, everyone. But I think that his production has been really impressive. Like you said, the Rams aren't bottom of the totem pole when it comes to passing defense, but they're not much above it. And so I think that he's going to just bring massive success to this team. We've already seen that they have the offensive production that they need. Now they need the defensive production. They're taking the right steps to get there. And if all of if they're firing on all cylinders, then yes, I think this is unquestionably a Super Bowl caliber team.
Yeah, I think just really, when you look at it, if they kept the 29th overall pick, were they really going to get a player that would help them more than a Trent McDuffie immediately? Like you mentioned, Stafford is 40 years old. Right. Stafford could retire tomorrow. People thought he was going to retire before this season.
The Rams' second string is a solid QB. Okay?
I don't know about that. But the point is that this is a team that needs their window is now, and if they don't get it now, then it'll take years and years to get back to this point potentially. And so, especially considering Puka Nacua is going to have to sign his deal soon, they're going to start losing money. They need to go all in now, just like they did the last time they won the Super Bowl. So, I think honestly, of all the trades, this was one of the ones that made the most sense in the moment. It was clear that 29th pick was not going to be worth it to the Rams the same way that Trent McDuffie is. This is a player that is a multiple-time All-Pro. This was a cornerback one on a Super Bowl winning team. This is a veteran player but also not super old. I just think he fits so perfectly for what they needed. But now this next player fits on any team. The fact that this guy, you already said it, the fact that Myles Garrett is on the Rams is stunning. I don't understand how that happened.
I'll say it again. It is mind-blowing to me that Trent McDuffie just isn't a blockbuster trade, even remotely.
Exactly.
Any time that your defense gets Myles Garrett, you're good. You're set, basically.
Literally, yes.
This guy can single-handedly carry your defense in a way that I don't think anybody else can in the NFL. I think he's exactly what the Rams need right now. If the Rams are going to go all in, they did it right. So kudos to them.
Yeah, true. Very true.
They're not looking to draft picks. They got their guys, and they got the best that they could, and kudos to them. So, yes, I think that now this Rams defense really is set. I think they needed a couple of tweaks, and they made a couple of really, really big tweaks. And so I'm super excited to see what they can do next year because I think that it's going to be this coming year and in 2 years when we see their production. In 3 years from now, it's going to be over.
Yeah, true.
Unless
Very true.
Tyson shows out and becomes an All-Pro.
Stop it.
Ask whoever you want about that.
Stop
But
it.
I think that this year and next year, the Rams are a Super Bowl team. And anything less than a Super Bowl for them will be considered a failure because they went
Absolutely.
all the best.
Absolutely. I think just looking at the trade package for Myles Garrett, they gave up Jared Verse, who very young player, defensive rookie of the year. He two-time Pro Bowler, one of the highest pressure rates guys in the league. Jared Verse is a great player. Jared Verse is a player that was arguably the best defensive player on the Rams. Jared Verse is nowhere near Myles Garrett. And not only did they give up Jared Verse, they only gave up one first-round pick, a 1 second, and a conditional third-round pick. They gave the fact that Myles Garrett arguably went for less than the Max Crosby deal. And now, sure, I think people have been really underrating Jared Verse in this trade details because just the number of first-round picks is everything that everyone sees. Myles Garrett is not just the best defensive player of this generation, arguably, he is maybe one of the best defensive players of all time.
Yeah. I don't know if I can make that statement without thinking much further about it, but I would say it's an interesting trade from the Browns' perspective because it's commitment that they're basically going to rebuild, but they're starting on a really solid foundation. Like you said, he's a young player, but he's shown production. And so because of that, the Browns aren't losing everything, but they are losing the best defensive talent in the league right now.
Not just in the league, just of the last since Aaron Donald and
Exactly.
JJ Watt.
And so I think that it kind of in a way makes sense for both teams, really strangely, because getting rid of Myles Garrett's always going to raise eyebrows, but right now I think the Browns should be valuing draft picks more than they should be valuing Myles Garrett.
True.
They can't do that much with him right now. And so Myles Garrett is going to a team where he will win a Super Bowl or it will be considered a failure. And on the flip side, a guy on the flip side, the Browns are losing a player that's not really going to help them too much. Obviously, he'll help them get sacks each game, but he's not going to help them, make it to the playoffs because they're not going to make it to the playoffs. Yeah. And instead, they're focusing on their future, and I can fully respect that.
I mean, to be fair, the Browns have been focused on their future their entire time their franchise has been around.
About, 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, just play it same. If Myles Garrett stayed for on the Browns, he would have never they never would have done anything. Mm-hmm. No disrespect to the Browns as an organization, but their last years, not even just last years, decades, have been filled with nothing but incompetence and nothing but front office malpractice, honestly. And so Myles Garrett, he was honestly trapped. He had to leave if he wanted any chance of winning a Super Bowl, of getting to that next level. But also, the Browns were honestly trapped to him. When you have a player like Myles Garrett, you have to try to compete. You have to try to put together a team like this. As good as Jared Verse is, you can be okay with rebuilding with Jared Verse because he's so young. So you can calm down. You can feel like it's okay to obviously tanking isn't really a thing in the NFL, but you can be okay with retooling, rebuilding. Because while you have Myles Garrett, all you're thinking is, wow, we are losing a lot of games, and we have the best defensive player in arguably of the last 20-something years. So I think it was really good for both teams. Yeah, and I just think, I mean, it's obviously going to hurt for a Browns fan. I just think, it just needed to happen. It needed to happen for the Browns.
It's the exact equivalent to Mike Trout being on the Angels in the MLB. He's an incredibly high-level talent that's never going to see the playoffs because his team is terrible, and that doesn't make anyone feel good. No one's happy when that is the situation. And so it's the best situation for everybody, whether the fans are going to be happy that you're getting rid of the number one player. No, naturally they won't be. But that being said, I think their team will have a lot more production because of it.
Yeah. I do want to say, The conditional third round pick, this is kind of weird to say with sports, but I think it was kind of sweet. I think the conditional third round pick was if Myles Garrett gets traded from the Rams to any other AFC North team, that conditional third round pick turns into a first round pick. And I just think it's really sweet that the Browns were like maybe you could say it's like, oh, it's just they just do not want Myles Garrett on any of their direct rivals. But I think it's kind of a sweet from like a fan perspective. It's like, man, you don't want to hate Myles Garrett. He's getting traded to the NFC West. That has nothing to do with the AFC North. You can feel free to root for that Rams team just because you, not obviously as like your number one team, but just because you want to see Myles Garrett succeed. You don't want to see that guy that you've loved for so many years end up on the Ravens, the Steelers, the Bengals. So right. I gotta say, I actually really like that condition from the Browns front office. I think it was both good from a fan perspective and just a team perspective. But I think there's just one more elephant in the room when it comes to the Myles Garrett trade. The fact that Aaron Donald is looking to come out of retirement, potentially.
See, I can't tell if that's real or not, and don't get me wrong, that would be awesome. I would love that.
It would be just prime time football every time.
And I can't even remember. How old is Aaron Donald right now?
He's 35 now.
So he's not totally out of it. I mean, everyone.
Have you seen his workout videos?
Everyone's seen his workout videos. This man is, in debatably the best shape of his life somehow. If that were to happen, it would be nuts, and I would love it.
Dude, I really want it to happen. I want it to happen so bad, purely because, for one, no offense to my fellow Falcons fans, we're not doing anything in the NFC. Sorry. I just want to see Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett. Aaron Donald was getting double and triple teamed every play. Myles Garrett's getting doubled and triple teamed every play. If they're on the same defensive line, what do you do? What do you do about that?
I think the interesting thing that will show is whether I so badly want to think that Aaron Donald still has it. And so because of that, yes, I'm fully on the train of bring him back. Let's just watch the Rams.
It'd be so cool.
Play with the rest of the NFL. But he's 35. Is he gonna still have that same quickness? And I desperately I just don't know.
I remember, so the quote that he said, he got asked when the trade went down, Pat McAfee texted Myles Garrett, hey, are you coming back with this news? And he said, I don't know, we'll have to see if I can light that same fire again. And obviously Sean McVay has been advocating for Aaron Donald to come back for years now. I think, honestly, from a personal perspective, I think too much of the conversation of the Myles Garrett trade has turned into is Aaron Donald coming back conversation. Mm-hmm. But I think that just goes to show just how good Aaron Donald was. This guy was an 8-time All-Pro first team in the 10 years that he played. Yeah. When he retired, his retirement post just said, quarterbacks rejoice. This is a monster. Not just a monster, but a Super Bowl winning monster. So, man, if he comes back to that line and he is just as good as he was in his final season with Myles Garrett next to him, I just can't even imagine how good of a team that would be.
So I'm going to throw in Adam Schefter 2 hours ago did tease that he will be coming back.
Wait, really?
That came out 2 hours ago. So, again, nothing is confirmed at all. But, it is definitely a thing that could happen, and the fact that it could happen should make, football fans everywhere rejoice, because watching Myles Garrett and Aaron Donald play on the same team, even if one of them is so far out of his prime it doesn't even matter, that would just be awesome.
Oh my god, dude, if you're a 49ers or a Seahawks fan and he comes back, just what do you even do to that? How do you stop that? You already have to double team Myles Garrett. What are you going to do about Aaron Donald when he's there? It's one of those combos of players that you just you only see in Madden when you turn off the cap. That's just how good of these two players. These are two of the top 3 best defensive line players in the last 20, 30 years?
Yeah. Yeah. what's scary about it is how good his shape is right now. Like, such good shape, and that is horrifying. Like, that man is just literally playing around with weights right now. It is nuts. And it would just be amazing. Oh my God, I would love it so much.
The last thing I want to talk about the Rams with this before, like, kind of moving away from the Aaron Donald conversation because there's just so much speculation with it. The Rams didn't even have a bad pass rush last season. They were 9th in sack percentage. They were 1st in rushing touchdowns allowed. They were 10th in EPA per play, and they were 8th in total sacks. This team was getting to the quarterback. They were stopping the run. They were making plays at the line already. And now you add the best defensive end in all of football and potentially the best defensive tackle in arguably football history. This is this is taking an already electric defensive line and just putting two cannons on it. This is insane.
Yeah, I mean, I said it earlier. I'll repeat it again. It's Super Bowl or failure for the Rams this year.
Absolutely.
There's no question about it. And if Aaron Donald comes back, it just raises that even more. But, they fixed their secondary. They fixed a not broken defensive line.
They didn't, it wasn't even broken. They just upgraded.
They just upgraded it. If they don't win the Super Bowl, it will be a massive blow. And honestly, I want them to win it. They've got a bunch of players that you want to cheer for. Myles Garrett's a guy
that's how you know neither of our teams have been good in so long. We're not even wondering
big moves. If it was 2016, the Giants would be half of our team.
Your team's been in the news for a while for some other reasons, but
our team is making a lot of decisions on and off the field.
There's been a lot of decisions.
Yeah. You know what? I love Jameis Winston. All right, Jameis Winston's always making me smile. Yeah. I think the Rams are the team that everyone wants to cheer for right now. If they bring back Aaron Donald, it's impossible to hate on that man. They brought in Myles.
He's a very lovable guy.
It is almost impossible to hate on Myles Garrett.
Another just super, super likable guy.
Right. And then, Matthew Stafford, who's also one of the most likable people in the NFL. They have players that you want to cheer for, and they're setting it all up for this year.
Honestly, Sean McVay, too. He's a really likable coach.
They just have, a team that you want to cheer for.
If you're not a 49ers, Seahawks, or, Cardinals fan, I feel like it would be super hard to look at that team and just be like, I just don't want this team to win. And, of course, some people are like, maybe it's, too unfair, or, them, the LA market, all of that stuff. I think it's maybe fair to not, want to cheer for them. But this is not an unlikable team. Of all the super teams that have been made, this is just one where, most of the players are just pretty likable. You just want to see them succeeding.
Yeah. No, it'll be fun for sure. And, Giants fan first, and I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to win the Super Bowl this year. But in second place, Rams.
Sure, bro. Yeah.
It's going to happen. It has to happen.
That'll happen. I'm sure.
I wish.
I don't know why I'm talking, but
got it. You guys will take care of this.
No, we won't. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. This has been a great episode. We hope to be a little bit more consistent now that school and all work has been wrapping down a little bit. But thank you so much again. Please follow. Please leave a comment if you got any thoughts. If you disagree with us, if you do agree with us, we really appreciate all the support, and we'll see you when we see you.